So I want to start off talking about marketing attribution at a high level, because although this might conflict with some other speakers, honestly, it's something we made up. Marketing attribution is just made up. Marketers made it up. And primarily the ones who made it up are the people who sell a marketing attribution software, telling you exactly what you need to track. So I want to start off with a question. I want to use these throwbox things a lot during this, just because I'm so used to being in like a virtual environment. I feel like we got all these people here. Let's create an interactive environment. So what are some untrackable marketing actions that lead to people booking demos, creating demand, buying a product, something like that? Something that's not necessarily trackable. Maybe you could find a way to track it, but it's not going to be like showing up on a UTM link.
A conversation between two people.
Yeah, conversation between two people. Maybe you heard of a software today, right? Like Chili Piper. Just kidding. What's something else? We're going to come back to this list in a second later. Other things that ways demos have been created, demand has been created, that's not like someone clicking on a tracked link. Yeah, seeing a billboard. That's a huge one. Word of mouth, talking to your friends, looking at a random organic social post. So what's crazy to me is that because these things aren't necessarily trackable, what's been happening in marketing is people just don't invest into the areas of marketing that aren't trackable. So what we're going to talk about today is how you can actually illuminate those conversations and those actions that are happening without a direct tracking link on them, and a bunch of other stuff. So it's going to be really cool. It's going to be really interactive. Why me? Like I said, they wanted the CEO. He wasn't available. So you're going to have to deal with me. But also, I've had some pretty exciting outcomes in my time at Chili Piper. When I joined, we had a consulting firm writing all of our social copy, and it looked just like everyone else's. There's this idea of brand consistency, right? Keep your brand consistent, appeal to your group. But quickly after I joined, what I realized is that we're not appealing to one audience that's the same. We're appealing to like 40 different audiences, right? There are 40 different types of people who are our audience or might follow us. Some of them like, content. They like long form blog posts. Some of them like silly memes. Some of them like pictures of employees. Some of them like just a picture of somebody who looks like them that they can resonate with, that they've seen success at that company. Some want customer stories. And what a lot of people get wrong is they try and place all their customers, their prospective customers, into this box. Hey, this is what our customer looks like. They like it. The green. Oh, we did some surveying on the green. They love the green. Everybody likes all this stuff. But what we found quite quickly, and this is how we went from 5,000 organic impressions on LinkedIn a month to over 1 million just as a Series A company, is that you really want to try to appeal to as many different groups as possible. So that's part of what I want to get into. We use this strategy to think, like, who are our customers? What are they listening to? What are they doing? And how do we reach them every single place they're reaching them? And eventually it led us to a bunch of conclusions. The primary one we're going to talk about today is influencer marketing. But some of the outcomes first from this, like my credibility, so to speak. So when I joined, we had about 5,000 organic impressions per month on social. Now that number is more than 1 million just from our company accounts. You probably hear all this stuff online. It's employee evangelism that matters on LinkedIn. Don't post from company accounts. What if everyone's just posting stuffy, corporate, cleansed versions of themselves from their company account? Like, what if it's not the account versus the personal account? It's the content you're saying. So that's one of the big things. 1 million organic impressions per month is pretty great for us. Another thing we're doing is generating 1 to 3 million organic impressions each month through employee evangelism, primarily on LinkedIn. And then on top of that, we're getting another 1 to 2 million organic impressions every single month on LinkedIn alone through influencer marketing. You know how much we pay for all of this? Nothing. We're looking at almost 8 million organic impressions per month. So it's been really exciting. A couple other things that are interesting that'll become relevant later, but 80% of our inbound traffic for Chili Piper, we get about between $1 and $3 million worth of inbound pipeline per month, comes from people Googling Chili Piper directly, or even going right to chilipiper.com. There's no tracking. It's all this organic bucket. Another thing, we're gaining about 11,000 followers on social per month. And about 35,000 search impressions we show up on LinkedIn each month. So basically, what I want to talk about is two things. Like, how do we get these results? How do you operate in this new epic of marketing where the decisions aren't necessarily being made because someone looks at an ad, and then how to start with your own influencer networking yourself. So that's what we're going to talk about. It's going to be super B2B focused. I know that there's a lot of super awesome B2C influencer marketing. I don't really know how that works. So maybe in the question area, we can talk about it. So, okay, back to this first question, but a little bit different. What influences buyers? Let's get some participation. Who's got it? Anybody? Yes.
No, I'm just part of the cute girl. Sorry.
Okay. Well, what influences buyers?
Stories.
Stories. Yeah. And then like we can talk high level and also like tactical, like what's going to influence someone. Someone wants to buy your tool. How do they get to it? Go ahead.
I'm going to tell some.
Reviews. Yeah. Reviews. What else? Anything else? Yeah.
Need.
What? Need. Yeah, need. And then there's like, I have the need myself, and then they go out and self-educate. Anything else? I'll list off a couple for you. Word of mouth, organic social, seeing people they respect and thought leaders, seeing people at events, all of this stuff. And now my question is like, how much of this stuff are you going to be able to track in HubSpot? Like how many of these actions we're describing here? Literally no one gave me any actions that I could tie a UTM link to. But this is how people make decisions. And this is especially true with the rise of people who are like dedicated software purchasers. We call them revenue ops, but they're marketing ops, they're sales ops. Their job is to buy tools. If your job professionally is to buy tools and a sales rep tells you to buy a certain tool, is that going to be super persuasive to you? It's a question. Like, when you're sold something by a sales rep, do you take everything they say at face value? What do you think? Good. Yeah, the answer is no. Because literally the person selling to you is the person with the very most at stake and the least, they have like the most moral hazard ever. They're literally getting paid if they convince you of something. So like, why would you listen to them? So what we believe at Chili Piper is that marketing is entering a new epoch where buyers actually have all the information that they need. And we heard this earlier in the first presentation today, and that they're self-educating. So then the question becomes, how do you become part of that, right? Like, where are they self-educating? Like, where are they getting this information from? Who are they talking to? When are they talking to them? Like, and then how do you be there as well? So we call it the dark funnel. And basically the dark funnel is a catch-all for all marketing that's not easily trackable in your system, right? But then we get back to that same conversation earlier about like why the mean executive is making all the bad decisions. Maybe it's because they need tracking for everything, right? Here's an example. Let's say from this event, one of you is like a mega influencer. You got 700,000 LinkedIn followers. And you go out afterwards and you're like, wow, really cool speech about Chili Piper and buyer enablement, blah, blah, blah. Wow, maybe I mentioned something about the tool later. You're like, I'm going to buy or whatever. And then some other random person looks at that post on LinkedIn. Then they talk to a friend about it. Then that friend is revenue ops at a company. Then they buy your tool or they come inbound to your website, just Googling your website. Like, can you track any of that? No, but doesn't it seem like it's really important to invest in that motion? Why is nobody investing in that motion right now? It literally is crazy. So, I never went to business school, but part of my theory is that a lot of these marketers were told how to market. They were taught exactly how to market in business school. They were taught the same way. And now the companies that are winning are actually the companies that are doing things differently, that are focused on referrals, on community, on word of mouth. So I want to pause for a second there on community, because that's my title at Chili Piper. I'm the director of community. At Chili Piper, community covers events, field marketing, customer marketing, social media, brand, PR, all sitting under the house of community. And we believe this because our job as marketers at Chili Piper is not to tell people, go buy our product, we're so great. It's to empower other people to send that message for us. And what I would say is if you're not doing that, if you don't have a concerted plan to like get other people who hold the attention of your audience, who your audience respects, who your audience identifies with personally, then really you're missing out on a whole big segment of marketing. And actually, I would say most companies are not doing this right now. And you can look at it because a lot of companies are just not being creative. They're not being different. Like Chili Piper's growth on LinkedIn right now is closer to companies that have like 200 million era. Like we're growing faster than companies like ZoomInfo or Intuit or these large companies. And we're doing it by not necessarily having to speak about ourselves all the time. So firstly, I want to get into what is community because it's seriously one of the new hot words in B2B SaaS and everybody has a different definition. I'm curious, how would folks define community within the B2B SaaS world? This is a little bit more difficult question than the other one, but I believe somebody in the audience might take a stab at it. How would you define community in the B2B SaaS world? Okay, I'll do it. Basically, I would say a community is a space where people who are not expressly paid to do something are sharing information with each other organically. Here's a great example of what's not a community. Your company customer community, where a customer asks a question and then a dedicated employee from your company replies to every single question. That's not a community, that's a message board. Here's what else is not a community, like a B2B peer group that is exclusive and a whole half of the market isn't allowed in because there's some sort of competitive whatever. They're like, oh, we don't want our competitors in there. That's not a community. That's like a fake sterilized zone that doesn't really have free speech in it. A community is when people are really interacting with each other. So then the question is, like, what influence does community have on the buying decision now? And we would state that it's a big deal. Firstly, we survey all of our customers after their close won. And over the last year, we actually had 30% say they heard of us first through a community. So a lot of these communities, actually, they rose up at the beginning of COVID, some earlier. I was formerly the general manager of a community called Modern Sales Pros, where I scaled it from 1,000 to 14,000 members, monetized it, selling sponsorships to other companies, brought in a couple million revenue. But now when COVID hit, people weren't able to like hang out like this. So they started to join all these Slack groups. Is anyone here a member of a Slack group where there are people that are similar titles to you and you're interacting with each other? Show of hands, Slack group people. Yeah, who's a member of 20 Slack groups? Oh God, community life is tough. But basically, why do none of these marketing attribution tools cover anything that happens in any of these groups? Like HubSpot, do they report on these Slack conversations? Do they report on the word of the mouth? They really don't do any of that. So this was a really interesting question for me because when I first joined Chili Piper, the first request I got from our CEO was to go ahead and build, I totally forgot about my slides. They're not that important. There we go. First question was to go build a community. And I'm like, okay, but why? He's like, oh, because we build a community and then we'll get all our customers there and we'll get all our prospects there and then we're gonna sell. And I'm like, okay, like I see that. Here's a list of 30 other communities. What do you want to do about those? And he's like, oh, we can just have a plan across all of them. And I cannot build you a community and be represented across 30 other communities. And he trusted me and listened to me. So at Chili Piper, we came up with a cross-community evangelism strategy, which starts with identifying the spaces that are most relevant to you. So I'd like all of you, like how many of you are selling a product, work at a company that sells a product? Show of hands. All right. Not everybody, but a good amount. And I'm assuming there are probably some communities where your buyers are hanging out, right? Would you say that can you name any of them now?
Like physical or digital?
Either.
Yeah, coffee shops.
Coffee shops. Yeah, physical, they're in coffee shops. Or what else? Some digital options as well. Does anyone have a buying committee in a Slack group somewhere? Or like you're selling a marketing automation tool? Anybody here selling a marketing automation tool? A data intent tool? A B2B, a tool that sells to other B2B marketers or B2B salespeople? Nobody. Okay, well, I do. Like everyone I know who's not in this room does just because of where I am. And basically what we found was that rather than trying to build our own community, we wanted to focus on, I visualize it as like a small black dot that leaks out to all the other communities. So instead of trying to create our own plot of land, this is the Chili Piper community, we own it, you better not talk about our competitors in here. We focused on building advocates across all these communities. There's one community called Pavilion, not sure if any of you heard them. To sponsor costs like $150,000. And then you get to send your own message out to them. We took a different strategy. We paid for the membership dues of 5 members. There's another community out there. It's called WizOps. And rather than going in there and being like, we want to claim our stake, I offered free consulting advice to the founder of this community. I've actually consulted with almost every single one of these B2B communities, and then they think of us. So basically, the reason I mention this is because it's just a couple examples of where buying decisions happen that isn't tracked in a spreadsheet somewhere. So if you're able to actually engage in these areas, you're going to find you're going to gain a competitive advantage. Let's see what the next slide says. Okay, what is the dark funnel? Already talked about this. It was great. Types of B2B influencers. Yeah. So this is the next thing I want to talk about. I'm really excited about it. There are a bunch of different types of influencers in there within B2B. Let's give some examples. Does anyone have an example of a type of person who they think is an influencer within B2B? Go ahead. It's like, I was actually thinking we were coming up with an idea of like getting fun dice. That's like you roll them and they always add, it's like a poll on LinkedIn about thought leadership or whatever. I feel like you could do this dice metaphor for link. So like a sales bro talking about outbound who's got 10,000 followers or whatever. That's one type of influencer. Like a top performing rep at a company that just raised a ton of money. They're super active on social. That's another influencer. The founder of one of these communities, that's an influencer. Authors, people writing books, people owning large audiences on social. Basically, what I would say is the first step to figuring out what type of B2B influencers you want to build is to look at your product and say, like, who are the people who buy your product? That's your first step. Who's your buying committee? All right. Who does your buying committee listen to? The easiest way to do that, we heard this earlier, just ask them. Survey your closed won customers. Where do you consume content? Podcasts, community, social, whatever. What we found, and I can take a couple shortcuts for you because you don't have to give that data, is like revenue operations professionals, the people buying these $30,000, $50,000 software purchases, they're hanging out a lot in these communities and they're following other revenue operations professionals. So then the question becomes, how do you reach these folks, right? So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit. We'll go back here for now. So yeah, how do you reach all these revenue operations folks? And there are a bunch of different ways to do it. We're going to get into it. But one of the main ways that we do it is build a customer advisory board. And that's one of the types of communities that you can easily just like write down an idea, hey, build a customer advisory board. And then if you don't have one, it's probably something that'll increase your business. Who here has a customer advisory board currently at their business? Nobody. So how do you get feedback on your product from customers? Are you surveying them? Yeah, just one-off surveys to customers. Twice, how often? Twice a year surveys to customers. Anyone else have like an advisory board of customers? Nobody. Well, oh my gosh. You could get a great promotion here because it's really easy. So we built our customer advisory board and immediately it's been like massively impactful for us. I built a customer advisory board at a previous company, but with this function, we actually took a kind of extra and we built 6 customer advisory boards instead of 1. So I would define a customer advisory board as a gathering, like a community, right? Where people share information without being explicitly paid to do so with each other. And it's something that you can create yourselves. So here's how our customer advisory board works. We have 6 different groups, 1 for executives, 1 for demand gen leaders, 1 for revenue operations leaders, 1 for the founders of all these communities we want to influence, 1 for all the top performing reps across all of our client base. And then we're creating a new one. There's 7 actually, a partner advisory board. So all of our best channel partners in one place together. And then there's a 7th one we're coming out, which is going to be a cultural advisory board, which is like a group of the people who are the best at making sure your company's treated equitably. We have 50% female managers at Chili Piper, just making sure you're supporting with employee resource groups, like a group where people talk about how to create the best work environment ever. So the reason we created 6 is because we gather these people together once a quarter. And what I found through running 100 events is like one of the most impactful things. There are 2 factors that'll always tank an event. One is lack of gender diversity. So we did NPS surveying after all of our events and found that like nobody enjoys an event if it's all one gender. Usually if you're doing B2B tech events, it's going to be like all dudes because sales in particular is overwhelmingly male dominated right now. It's a great way to like hurt your event, have it be horrible. Another way to ensure that event isn't successful is to have people don't share things in common, right? So you have a CEO talking to a rep about problems that they just don't share mutually, right? So we built out these 6 groups, and then it was quite simple. The ask was really simple. Hey, all we want is an hour of your time once a quarter. We're going to send you super fancy wine and cheese for a virtual chat, and we just want to hear from you. We have the meetings. We have the persona of the person within our company who owns, like, the RevOps leader at Cmejla would manage the RevOps one. I manage the community one. Someone on my team who manages field marketing as a former account executive manages the sales cab. But basically, after we brought everyone together, something super amazing happened. Firstly, everyone can be activated in the cab for different reasons. One of my favorite reasons is product feedback, right? So you get your customers together, you tell them your product roadmap, you ask for their feedback on it. They give you feedback. You bring that feedback to push against the random, like, finger in the wind hypotheses that sometimes people get. So that's one great one. How else do you all think you could leverage a customer advisory board? There's product feedback. We have 7 main things that we drive towards. Let's say you could snap your fingers, have 20 of your best customers up to the CEO level, all together in a room. What would you hope to get from them?
Want to know why they bought us.
Why they bought us. Yeah, so feedback on marketing, getting them to the initial point of sale, and then potentially on product on why they're still with you. What else would you want to know?
Understanding their business challenges.
Yeah, how their tool applies to you. Yes, these are really great. What else? What would you want to know?
What was their experience like using my company?
Yeah, I'd want to know that too. And these are all super amazing things that if you're not leading with your customer in mind, then you're just, like, really not building a product for them. So that's what you want from them. But then the interesting thing happens once you do that, because you find that you bring your customers together to listen to them. All of a sudden, as Heather was saying, you're building a real relationship. You're listening to them. We fundamentally changed our product roadmap after our first cab meeting because people from companies like Twilio and RingCentral and all these other companies wanted to focus on our core product. Our core product, and I think this is quite topical today, is about, like, enabling conversions on your website. So basically, if someone comes in to request a demo of a company that uses Chili Piper, like, let's say Gong, it's a pretty cool B2B company, or Forrester, they'll come in, they'll fill out a couple form fields, and then we'll look up in their CRM whether or not they're qualified to have a meeting or not. And if they are, we'll figure out which rep on your team should chat with that person, and then we'll populate their calendar right on your website. And that's the core product. It doubles conversion rates in most cases because it allows you to turn website traffic into qualified booked meetings and put it on the calendar. The feedback we got overwhelmingly was that before we build all these other tools, they want more out of this core tool. So we delivered that to our customers. And then something really interesting happened. Almost every single customer who was part of the cab expanded their number of contract seats. They started leaning in. They all attended the cab meeting. We had a hypothesis that maybe they would announce they were a member of the cab. 95% of people went to social and announced that they were part of the cab. And now we get about 1 million organic impressions each month from the very best of our customers. All we had to do was listen to them. Well, that's not all we did, but it's a big part of it. So that's the first thing. Please just build a customer advisory board. It's a total game changer. So we talked about some of the ways we activate them: product feedback, marketing feedback. Here's another couple ways you can activate a customer advisory board. One is user-generated content. So what we found is that all we had to do was give people a title, give them some food, make them feel special, send them a really nice gift every quarter, and they would come to us saying, hey, how do I give back? There's some really interesting data out there in the community world and in the leadership world. It's a really great management proverb as well. But people are not motivated by incremental units of money. They're motivated by incremental units of trust and responsibility. So when you find your customers and you really listen to them and push them to give you their feedback, then they're going to feel this psychological desire to reciprocate. I'm going to take a slight sidebar here and just talk about psychology for a second because I'm really passionate about it. Heather and I were talking about it earlier. But one of my number one influences of all time is this guy, Robert Cialdini, who wrote this book. Who here is familiar with Cialdini? Okay. He wrote this book called Influence, The Science of Persuasion. I think that was the title. But anyway, he outlines these 5 things that are He calls them weapons of influence. One is liking. It turns out if you like someone, you're way more likely to do what they say, and vice versa. Another is gifting. There's a really fascinating case study in this book that they highlight. That they show the effect of leaving a mint when you leave a tip increases tips massively. If you leave 2 mints, the tips increase even more. But if you leave 1 mint and you walk away and then you come back and you say, for you nice folks, because you're so special, here's a second mint. Tips increase like 20%. It's crazy. Another one, reciprocity. Have you ever noticed where someone says, you're great, then you go, no, you're great. Has anyone ever done that? We are like psychologically primed to want to reciprocate to other people. Another is authority. People are 4 times more likely to follow someone wearing a suit into oncoming traffic. Another is consistency and consensus, where it's like the way we make decisions, we have to index off past decisions to make future decisions. Otherwise, we're going to have to reevaluate every aspect of our life constantly. So if you say green is my favorite color, you're literally more likely to like green after that. I actually, to take a slight political turn for a second, find this quite disturbing, because what can happen is we can have our opinions change without even knowing it. Like, let's say you vote for a political candidate, and then that candidate does something horrible. Like maybe they're racist. That happens a lot in US politics, to be perfectly honest. But if you voted for that candidate and then they say something racist, what the data would show is that people who voted are almost as likely to reevaluate their concept on race to align with the past decision they made than to say, oh, I was wrong for voting for that candidate. So people want to be consistent. Anyway, the reason I mention all of these is if you take a cab and you hit them with all 5 of these principles, reciprocity, liking, gifting, they're going to want to give back, and they're going to feel empowered to give back. So we started getting questions from our cab, which includes like the CMO of Ring Central, like CEOs, like some pretty awesome people there. How do I give back? I feel like this is one-sided. Oh, we just want you to be happy, want your feedback. But please, is there anything I can do? Sure. Well, here's this copy. If you want to announce that you're a member of the cab, put it a title on LinkedIn, go for it. Everybody did it. Then they come back. Hey, I want to do more. What can we do? Oh, well, if you really want, we can create a once a month or once a week kind of social amplification kit so you each can post everything. They're like, okay, let's do it. Then they come back. I feel like I should be doing more. Okay, well, like, what if we went into these posts that you made and then our team goes in and looks at the data, everyone who likes them, everyone who comments them, then we'll cross-reference that with our customer list, and then we'll send it back to you. And anybody that you message, hey, I saw you like my post about Chili Piper. If you want to get in touch with the team, here's Steven. We'll give you 20% on any deals you bring us, and we'll supply you with all this data. We'll give you a lot of really rich data on who your posts are reaching as well. What do you know? 60% of the cab members agreed to do this. Now we're generating hundreds of thousands of dollars in tracked pipeline through user-generated content, through direct intros and referrals through the cab. So anyway, that's one of the first types of B2B influencers. If you're going to start anywhere, start with your best customers who are already celebrities. I want to pause here and see if anyone has questions on this, but I figured it would be something that hopefully is tactical and maybe you can apply to your own work. So does anyone have any questions on how to build a cab, where to start, anything like that before we go on to the next type of influencer? Yes.
Wait.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess what would be your tip? So we definitely do not have any cabs, but we were just talking about it thinking it could be a good option for us. What's the best way you think to kind of get started? So we work at an insurance company. We sell health insurance products as well as like home and things like that. So
yeah, well, you can't tell from the slides. So the first thing I would say is figure out who's your buying committee, right? Maybe it's people who hold it, I actually don't know anything about the insurance industry. So, but who's your buying committee, right? And then I would send them a survey asking, how do you get your information? Who do you talk to? Who are people you respect? Who are thought leaders? I do a little bit of Googling as well. From there, you take that list and cross-reference it with your customer base. And you're like, are any of these people already existing customers? Then I would have an executive within your company reach out to them and say, hey, we're doing something totally different. We're picking a core of our very most important customers, and we're gathering together with a super fancy meal or whatever, just to learn a little bit more about how they view our product in the market. Have that first conversation, see where it goes, and then basically get a strong buy-in from folks. We do use a referral program, so all of our cab members get a kickback. They get 20% of anything they net source new to us, and they get 10% of influencing a current deal. So like an account executive's working a deal, they're like, oh, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, here, talk to this person who runs sales at Medallia. Really happy customer, chat with them. They're like, oh my gosh, like, I've never even met Sarah. Like, that's amazing. Then you chat with them. So it's a really easy way to do it. I'd be happy to chat afterwards if you want, but it's just like build a small group, 5, 10 people, and tell them, build it in public. Hey, I want to build this thing. I want you to help me build it. Because if you tell someone to be part of something and it's like, this is how it works, blah, 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 then they're going to be like, okay, you're placing me in this. But if you ask someone to build something with you, there are 2 really amazing things that happen. One, they feel ownership over it. So they're going to be more likely to lean in because they feel like it's their thing. Everyone, this is like what you were saying earlier about asking questions. The reason you ask questions is not only to show that you're listening, but it's way better if someone else concludes something than you just telling them that. But the other reason I really suggest you tell them you're building it in public is it just creates a super low bar for like the production quality and stuff, where if something goes wrong, you're like, that's why we're building it in public together for the first time. So it's really funny. But anyway, the cab is just huge. If you take one thing away from this chat, it's like, if you don't have a cab, you should build a cab. It'll benefit your business in every way. Product, customer success, engineering, roadmap, marketing, sales, referrals. Any other questions on this before I move on to the second type of influencer? Okay. The other thing I would say on it, I have one more comment on it myself, is like get them really fun gifts. And we'll talk about that more later because I believe that gifting is like the new demand gen. Okay. So what if you just don't have any influencers in your customer base, right? You don't have any of these advocates that people are going to listen to. How do you go out and build relationships with them? Or beyond that, like what if you have customers, but they just don't care about your product? They're like 3 steps removed from it or whatever, CMO of some massive company. So I want to start with a super weird example of something that happened that turned out well. And it was like, it seems organic, but it's really not. So 2 months ago, Chili Piper did this contest, the top marketing leaders of LinkedIn. And this was back when polls were super powered on LinkedIn. So each day, we crowdsourced, we said, who are your favorite marketers? We got 250 nominations. We narrowed the list down. We sorted for a couple things to make sure it was like a diverse list, a good mix of people, good mix of titles. Then we came out with a head-to-head polling bracket, essentially. Everyone went head-to-head. There were a couple influencers we really wanted to win, so we seeded them against the weakest people. The top 8 people got an espresso machine. The number 1 person got a plane ticket to anywhere in the world. The top 8 people all got $1,000 to charity. So basically what we did is we created this contest, adding random people. One of the people was the top marketing operations leader at Slack, which is now a Salesforce company. Someone we've really wanted to engage with for a while that doesn't answer any of our emails, isn't going to click on a paid ad. They know everything about everything. Why would they click on a paid ad? So let me see how much time I got left. All right, I got time. So she came in second place. We sent her all the gifts. A month later, I reach out to her and I'm like, hey, because we're friends at this point. We built her brand. She gained over 7,000 followers on LinkedIn from being part of our contest. We've given and given and given. So the reciprocity effect's there, right? So I ask her and I say, hey, sales keeps bugging me. I feel like we're friends at this point. Will you chat with them? Of course, I'd be happy to chat with them. And then everyone's like, Dan, you got Slack to evaluate our tool. Everyone's so excited. We had a chat with her. Slack is not ready to purchase Chili Piper. They literally just merged with Salesforce. There's 1,000 tech things happening. But we share this really cool article with her about how this company Gong uses Chili Piper. Essentially, there's an integration with this other tool, Clearbit or ZoomInfo, both customers of ours as well, where on your website, you can put in just your email. So I can put in dan@chilipiper.com and then it'll look up on the back end, company size, technographic information, where I live, all sorts of territorial stuff. So you can do routing and qualification off just one email. Sarah was fascinated by this. After the meeting, although she didn't purchase, she made a post to social about our tool, about this case study. It got over 100,000 impressions. Now, I told you we get 1 million organic impressions every month from the company channel. But something in my head, I was like, okay, why do I care so much more about these 100,000 impressions than I do the 1 million? I feel like I would trade 3 months worth of our company channel stuff where we're like, look, we're hiring globally. Like we do a lot of talent stuff on LinkedIn. It's not like super in depth. I would trade that. And I was in 3 sales demos the next month. All 3 of them mentioned this random post. So we tried to dive deeper. We went into that post. We enriched every single like from it, every single comment from it. Then we used a tool called Lead IQ to get their emails. Then we uploaded that to our CRM and we cross-referenced it against our inbound pipeline. Turns out, within a week of that post, over 20 people who'd liked that post had taken a demo request for us. For us, we got about a $20,000, $10,000 to $20,000 average contract value. So we're looking like 400,000 in new business came in from this one LinkedIn post. And then I was thinking like, why did she post that? She's not a customer. Maybe there's this reciprocity effect, but what else is there? And this is the second type of influencer marketing that I want to talk about. It's supplying people to create content that aligns with their brand. Sarah's a great example. She's a marketing expert who's very into the nuance of how things work. She also is a LinkedIn influencer. She has to post 5 times a week to LinkedIn to get the algorithm to work in her favor, right? So by supplying her with content, I'm essentially making it easier for her to do her job as a LinkedIn influencer. So from there we thought, what other types of content can we supply people? And the answer there was gifts. So we built a list of all the influencers that wouldn't join our cab, or even some that weren't even customers yet. And we found some reason to gift them. Hey, loved this post. Hey, you won this contest. Hey, you're a customer. A lot of times these gifts actually took the form of hand-drawn art, likenesses of them that alluded to their past posts on social. But imagine if you're an influencer, someone gifts you something that really celebrates your brand and celebrates you. What are you going to do? You're going to repost that to social. And then I know how many impressions it gets. On average, because the influencers we target, these posts get about 75,000 impressions. So what's that going to show up in my CRM as? Am I going to ask these influencers, by the way, post this UTM parameter as well? Like, that would be totally transactional and weird. I would never do that. But what I can do is I can know who their audience is based on their followers. I can know how many people engaged with it. I can know roughly the impressions and I know how much I spent. Usually it's paying a bunch of super badass local artists in Vermont about $20 an hour to produce this art. We spend another $30 sending it out. So I'm looking at a $50 purchase here that I send to someone. They have a 90% chance of reposting. That gets 100,000 impressions. So essentially I'm paying $50 for 90,000 impressions by one of like the best influencers out there. And like, I'm hoping this is a light bulb moment for some folks. The whole idea is that there's this whole epic of marketing, of influencer marketing, of brand marketing that nobody's focusing on because you can't tie a simple UTM to it, which is just crazy to me. It's just crazy. So I love it because it allows Chili Piper to operate in areas that other people won't operate because they can't show the deets within their CRM. Okay, question.
Talk us through the way that you calculated the ROI. On a $50 drawing, you could do those all day long, and your marketing department, your CEO would say, okay, it's only costing me $50. Sending someone on a plane ticket anywhere around the world, how did you figure out how many leads you needed to generate to be able to make that program work? And did you?
Yeah, so this is the exact question where like when people can't answer that, they stop taking these actions right now in marketing. So the question you're asking right now is literally the competitive advantage that I'm alluding to. Honestly, I don't know. I don't have an answer to that exactly. I do know that since we launched this program, our CAB program, without taking other incremental marketing actions, not spending more on ads, not doing any of this other stuff, that our inbound demos per month have doubled in the last 2 months. So from around 600,000 inbound pipeline to around 1.2 million last month. I also know that I can survey previous closed won customers and ask them how they heard of us. So when we did this last time, 40% of all new customers over the last year said they heard of us through social, and then another 30% said they heard of us through community. There's another thing I could do. On my form request field, I can put a drop down or an open-ended question, how did you hear about us? But like the very fact that a CEO is like, show me the ROI of that plane ticket is like why they're never going to succeed in this strategy, because you can't really track it all. You need to like make assumptions to operate in this space. And I just think it's funny that all these attribution softwares also are like, here's the full picture. By the way, we can't do community, can't do organic social, can't do word of mouth. We don't know about this event stuff. So I would say, like, I would push back and say, like, how do you know any of the other metrics you're looking at aren't missing a huge part of the picture? But it's a really good question. I think the answer is I'm very fortunate to have a CEO who gets marketing, but I don't know the ROI of that plane ticket. The person who won the last contest, Daniel Murray, has this group called the Marketing Millennials on LinkedIn, which is like massive. He hasn't taken the plane ticket yet, but I know that he shows up at every meeting. I know that he's referred us 5 customers. I know that we're building an integration with a company right now. They're going to be the only company out there that can get a voucher to get Chili Piper for cheaper. I know that when he posts from his personal on our LinkedIn page, we get a massive spike in engagement. So like, these are the type of things that as a marketer, you need to just be able to be like, this is good enough, I'm close enough, let's do it. And then on the back end, in the surveying of customers, that's where you can get the data there. Does anyone else have any questions about this? Cool. So there's one last thing I want to talk about here with the 44 seconds I have left. And that is making sure that you don't set and forget. So there are really easy ways to do this. One of the main reasons I wanted to go out and track all of this social stuff was so that I could get a justification for more headcount. Hey, I don't know if this led to a demo, but this person commented on this post and then the next day booked a demo. And then what do you know? The sales rep asked them if it was an outbound email. And they asked them 3 times in the demo, because sales is always going to try and attribute stuff to themselves. But basically, there are 2 ways you can make this really effective. So first, figure out who to build your CAB with. Figure out your buying committee, survey them. Who do you listen to? Reach out to those people amongst your customers, build a CAB. Reach out to those people who aren't your customers, find ways to build their brand. Like, get a video of them reacting to your product, saying, wow, that product's so cool, even if they're not using your product. And then from there, there's a couple other steps you can take. I would recommend creating an activity score for your advisory, for your influencers. Like, an influencer is considered healthy if they post once per month, attend the meeting, do this, do that. Create a health score across your CAB and then tie it to someone on your team's comp. We have an amazing customer marketing department at Chili Piper. Taylor Boger is our head of customer marketing on one of the teams I serve. Her comp is tied to getting people to make these posts. And then what's really cool is the CAB people feel appreciated. We get all kinds of feedback. This is the best CAB I've ever been part of. I feel so cared for. I do all this. Like, how can I do more? And it's just because there's someone there whose job is to keep a finger on the pulse. If you lean into your customers, they're going to lean back into you if you do it right. So that's the one tip I would say. And I would give the same tip again and say the same thing for communities. Look at all the communities. Look at LinkedIn. Look at social media platforms and be like, what does a healthy day of our brand look like on here? How many times are we mentioned? How many times do we mention in these communities? When there's a thread about us versus our competitors, how many times do we get mentioned versus our competitors? By the way, you probably should also have a library of all of your core customer advocates and where they hang out. So if a question comes up in a specific community, you can search by that community, find 5 people who'd be happy to say something for you. And then you train them to not be shills, right? Just say something real. So basically, if you find out who they are and then build it and then put really nice comp metrics alongside it, you're going to have someone whose job is essentially just to make amazing advocates and make sure they're listened to. And then it's just going to be awesome for your brand. So that's what I have mainly. I do think the fact that, a lot of people need the exact attribution on all their campaigns is stifling creativity massively within B2B marketing. And this is how we've done it at Chili Piper. So I think I have 0 time left for questions. And I really appreciate you. I'd be happy to take questions afterwards. Thank you so much.